When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject: Roadkill. User: Brad Emily 33. Posted November 29th, 1996.
I wasn't supposed to be driving that night. Not after the amount I'd had. Not after the years my mother spent drilling warnings into me every time I had so much as held a beer. But old habits come back fast when you're home for the holidays. You fall into the same seats, the same bars, the same crowds who talk you into one more drink, and before you know it, you're behind the wheel, telling yourself you're more sober than you are because you can still keep the car between the lines. It was late, close to 2, I think, when I left Murphy's Tavern and rolled down the long stretch of county road that led back to my parents' house. The air had that brittle November chill that always hits after midnight, where each breath feels colder than it has any right to be. Streetlights were sparse out there. Most of the time, it was just me, the dark, and the sound of my tires humming over cracked asphalt. A thin fog clung low to the ground, the kind that distorts distance, makes every mailbox and fence post look taller and closer than it is. I wasn't speeding, but I wasn't exactly crawling either. I just wanted to get home, sneak into the house without waking anyone, and sleep off the buzz before Thanksgiving morning noise started. I remember glancing down at the radio for half a second, one distracted, stupid second, and when I looked back up, something was already in the road, long, pale, and wrong. I didn't have time to brake. The thing snapped its head toward me, not in a panic, not like an animal caught in headlights, more like it had been watching me all along. There was a flash of limbs, too many joints bending the wrong directions, and then impact. The car lurched hard enough to jerk the wheel from my hands. I heard the thump beneath the bumper, felt the sickening lift as the tires rolled over something with weight, something that gave like flesh but didn't sound like any animal I'd ever heard hit. I coasted onto the gravel shoulder and slammed the gear into park. For a long moment, I just sat there, breathing too fast, gripping the wheel until my knuckles hurt. I kept telling myself it was a deer, a big raccoon, anything normal, but deer don't look like that. They don't stand on 2 legs. They don't turn their heads like a person sizing you up, and whatever I hit had been damn near the height of the hood. Eventually, with hands that didn't feel like mine, I climbed out and walked to the front of the car. The bumper was smeared with something dark, not quite blood, more like a thin, oily residue. Hair clung to the grill, but not fur. not anything I recognized. The strands were too fine, almost translucent, like spider silk matted together. I gagged, leaned against the car to steady myself. The road behind me was empty. No body, no blood trail, just the quiet hum of distant highway noise and the faint hiss of fog settling again. I walked further, following the slight curve of the pavement, shining my flashlight across the ground. Nothing except a few shallow impressions in the gravel, not footprints exactly, but indentations shaped like something had braced itself with long, thin limbs before standing upright. A twig snapped in the woods to my right. I whipped the light toward the sound. The trees stood there, motionless, branches skeletal against the dim sky, but the beam caught something low to the ground, a dozen yards in. A smear of that same translucent residue on the bark of a cedar trunk, as if something had pressed its hand there, or whatever passed for a hand. "Hello?" I said, and instantly felt like an idiot. But something in those woods was listening. I could feel it. The air had changed, grown heavy, almost charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm when the static rises along your arms. The sound came again. Not the snap of a twig this time, a scrape, slow, deliberate, something dragging itself between the trees. I backed toward the car, keeping the light trained on the underbrush. The scraping stopped. The woods went silent. Then, something skittered beneath the car. I froze. You can always hear small animals under a vehicle, the scamper of a possum, the quick patter of a stray cat, but this sound was different. Heavy, crawling, a deliberate slide of weight shifting on the metal frame. I crouched, shining the light under the car. Two eyes stared back at me, not reflective like an animal, not glowing, just aware. Human shape, but deeper set, too dark, almost sunken into the face. The thing's skin was pale and stretched too tight, as if it had grown too fast for its body. One arm clung to the axle, joint bending backwards, fingers too long, nails scraping lightly against the oil pan. I scrambled back so fast I slipped on the gravel. My flashlight spun away, landing with the beam pointed off into the ditch. By the time I crawled to my feet, the thing was moving, sliding out from under the car with a kind of horrible grace, limbs folding and unfolding like a spider struggling to mimic a person. It stood at its full height in the middle of the road, taller than me, neck too thin, shoulders jutting sharply, and its head tilted. Tiny motions like it was trying to recognize me or remember me. Then it opened its mouth. There was no voice, no cry, no growl. Just a sound like air escaping from deep inside hollow lungs. A long, rattling exhale that made my stomach twist. I didn't wait for more. I lunged into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and locked it. When the headlights lit the road again, the thing didn't flinch. It stood there perfectly still, breathing that awful, rattling breath, one arm twitching at an angle that made my own joints ache just looking at it. I floored it. The tires spun gravel before catching pavement. The thing lurched forward as if to chase, but the moment the car surged ahead, it stopped, head turning sharply as it watched me tear down the road, fishtailing in the fog. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't want to see what it might be doing. I didn't want to see if it had started running after me. I just drove. The road stretched into a blur. Every shadow looked like limbs. Every mailbox looked like a crouched figure ready to leap. And when I finally pulled into my parents' driveway, I sat there with the engine idling, hand shaking, staring at the dark tree line across the yard. I kept expecting to see those sunken eyes watching from between the trunks. I didn't sleep that night, and the next morning, when the sun finally came up and my family bustled around the house with the noise and warmth of Thanksgiving, I walked outside to check the damage. The bumper was cracked, but intact. The residue had dried to nothing. There was no hair, no markings, nothing that proved what I'd seen. But the gravel at the end of the driveway, that told a different story. Tracks, not footprints, drag marks, as if something had crawled across the road and into the woods sometime after I got home. Something injured, something stubborn.
Subject: Blue Heron Supper Club. User: SparkBug451. Posted April 15th, 1999.
It sat crooked on a metal shelf in the diner basement, behind old ketchup packets and a tub of mismatched forks. The cardboard was soft at the corners, like it had been waiting to crumble. On the lid, written in faded blue pen, "Sunrise, Archives, do not toss." I'd just finished mopping. The air down there smelled like bleach and fryer grease, heavy as syrup. Upstairs, the neon open sign still buzzed, even though Joe had locked the front door. I didn't mind closing. Nobody trusted me with the register, but I was good with basements. Quiet, steady places that didn't talk back. When I slid the box forward, the smell hit me. Smoke. Old and sweet, the kind that never leaves fabric. Inside were stacks of matchbooks, each rubber-banded tight. Names printed across the covers. County Line Bowl, Lakeview Motel, Red Barn Lounge. Places I'd only ever seen burned out along the highway, their signs half buried in weeds. I shouldn't have taken any, but one caught my eye. A blue heron stamped in gold foil. Blue Heron Supper Club, Delphos, Ohio. I tore a match free. The stick felt oily, the head darker than it should have been. I struck it. The flame lifted, small but alive, and then everything softened. Edges, air, sound. I wasn't in the basement anymore. White tablecloths, a stage, a woman in a champagne dress singing into the hush. Men in suits, women with cigarettes balanced like jewelry. It smelled like butter and cologne. I blinked, and it was gone. Basement again. The match burned out in my fingers. I told myself I was tired. Too many doubles. But when I lit another, County Line Bowl, I saw polished lanes gleaming like glass, laughter, the sound of pins crashing, a man in a red jacket watching a woman bowl, her green sweater bright under cheap lights. Then gone. Basement. Each book showed me another life before it burned. The Lakeview Motel. 2 men, one pouring ice into a bucket, one sitting on the bed, smiling like he'd forgotten how. The Carousel Bar. Women in sequin dresses, clapping along to a jukebox. All gone now. All ashes on the edge of town. By the time I reached the bottom of the box, I was shaking. The last stack was banded tighter than the rest, stamped with our own name. Sunrise Diner. Compliments of Joe. I hesitated. Then I struck one. Light, color, sound. The diner, but new. Green booths, clean chrome, real flowers on the tables. Joe stood behind the counter, younger, smiling at some joke I couldn't hear. A cook flipped eggs on a flat top that didn't squeal. The kind of light that makes you believe in morning again. I wanted to stay there just a little longer, but the air shifted. The lights dimmed. The smell changed, grease turning sour. Someone yelled from the kitchen. Joe, older now, pushed through the swinging door, keys in hand, face red with panic. He ran to the back door and slammed the bar. It didn't open. He shouted for help, turned the key, pulled harder. The lock held. The cook screamed, and then smoke. I blinked. Basement. My hands were shaking. The match had burned down to my skin. I dropped it, breathing hard. It couldn't be real. The diner hadn't burned. I'd been working here 2 years. Still, when I went upstairs, I checked the back door. The metal was dented right where I'd seen him hit it. The tag on the keyring read, Back Del Base. I told myself it was a coincidence. Old building, old door, but the mark was the same shape as his shoulder. I should have gone home. Instead, I went back down. The box waited, lid open like it knew I'd return. I took one more Sunrise matchbook, tore one stick free, held it between fingers that smelled like soap and smoke, and then I lit it. The diner again. Only now, the walls had gone gray. The air shimmered like something holding its breath. I could see Joe at the back door pounding, the cook pulling at the extinguisher that wouldn't come loose, people shouting, chairs tipping. The world was turning red from the floor up. I looked down. My own hand was on the same metal bar, but in the basement, in now. The heat from the match crawled toward my knuckle. I told myself I'd count to 3 and snuff it out. 1. The air moved toward the flame, a slow, hungry pull. 2. Upstairs, old upstairs, the ceiling bloomed orange. Joe slammed the bar again. The lock screamed. 3. I pinched the match and missed. It dropped into the box. The sound it made was small, but the fire that followed was not. Cardboard sighed, then whooshed. Heat rose fast, faster than I thought possible. The air turned to glass. Papers lifted from the shelves like birds. I stumbled back, coughing, eyes watering. The stairwell filled with light. Upstairs, someone yelled my name. I don't know if it was Joe, but I grabbed the rail, tried the door, and nothing. The metal swelled under my hand, hot enough to stick. The sound of breaking glass echoed from above like windows shattering their own reflection. I hit the bar again. It didn't move. The lights flickered, and in the glass of the door, I saw more than myself. The supper club singer, the bowler, the men in the motel, all flickering through me like smoke through wood. Every place I'd lit, every life I'd borrowed, all burning at once. And through it all, the same warmth, the same whisper that wasn't sound at all. You saw us. I grabbed the sugar caddy from the counter, threw it at the window. The first hit cracked it. The second broke through. Air rushed in and fire followed it.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.